I always hated walking through the woods at night, but something about that evening pulled me deeper than usual. The moon hung low and pale like an eye. Watching me through the black branches, the air was colder than it should have been. Every step crunching the dried leaves sounded like something following me. Though I knew I was alone, or at least I thought I was. The path seemed to twist in ways I did not remember, as if the woods had changed since the last time I had been there. The trees leaned closer, their bark like faces twisted in agony, shadows stretched far too long for the dim light that fed them, and then I heard it a whisper, not behind me, not ahead, but all around me. The sound of a voice with no shape and no mouth. I froze my breath loud in my chest. I called out hello, but the woods swallowed my voice in silence. Then something answered. It was not words, but a low rumble, almost like laughter. The branches above shook, though there was no wind. I began to walk faster. The whispering grew louder, closer, right against my ears. I tried to leave the path, but no matter which way I went, the forest bent me back in the same direction. Finally, I saw a light ahead, faint like a lantern, swinging slowly side to side. I ran toward it, desperate for a way out. But when I reached the clearing, there was nothing, just a circle of trees, and in the center, a stump on the stump, sat a lantern burning with no flame, only shadows shifting inside the glass. I reached for it, and the second my fingers touched the cold metal, I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, there was no one there, but I swear, I felt hot breath against my neck, and the last thing I remember before everything went black was the lantern shattering into darkness. I had always heard the stories about the abandoned house at the edge of town. People said it was cursed, said strange lights flickered inside when no one should be there, said you could hear voices whispering from the upstairs rooms when you passed it late at night, but I never believed any of it until I made the mistake of stepping inside. The night was heavy, with low clouds that choked the moonlight. The air sharp with the smell of wet earth. I stood before the broken gate, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The house loomed in front of me like a skeleton of wood and stone. Its roof sagged. Its windows were hollow eyes, shattered glass, glittering in the dirt. The porch sagged forward like it wanted to swallow me whole. I told myself it was just a house, only rotten wood and dust, nothing more. I pushed the gate and it groaned loud enough to wake the dead. Then I walked up the path, weeds clawing at my boots. The closer I got, the colder the air seemed to grow, and when I touched the doorknob, my skin prickled as though the metal was alive. The door swung open with a sigh. The smell inside was a mix of rot, mildew, and something faintly sweet, like decay. I raised the flashlight, its beam weak against the dark. The wallpaper peeled from the walls like dead skin. The floor creaked beneath me, and every step echoed as though someone else was following, just a pace behind. The living room was choked with dust furniture draped in yellowed sheets. Their shapes twisted and unnatural under the fabric. One of them seemed to rise and fall, as if breathing. Though when I shone the light on it, the sheet was still. I swallowed hard and told myself it was only the air moving, nothing more, but the back of my neck crawled with dread. I moved deeper into the house, passing under a broken archway. Into the dining room, the long table was covered with a thick layer of dust, but I could see faint marks, as though fingers had been dragged through it. Recently, I leaned closer to look, and saw not just one set, but many small lines, like dozens of hands had reached across the table. A sound came from above, faint footsteps, slow, deliberate creaking across the upstairs floorboards. I froze my light, trembling in my hand. I whispered, "Hello," but the word felt wrong in my throat, too loud, too alive for the air of that place. The footsteps stopped. Then silence pressed in, heavier than before. I could have left right. Then I should have, but curiosity, or maybe something darker, pulled me toward the staircase. The wood groaned under my weight. Dust falling from the ceiling with each step, the banister felt sticky, as though it had been touched too many times by too many hands. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with closed doors. The wallpaper here was darker, curling at the seams like it was alive. I tried the first door, locked. The second, also locked. The third swung open slowly before I touched it. My heart slammed in my chest. Inside the room was bare, except for a cracked mirror leaning in the corner, the glass fractured into jagged spiderweb lines. I lifted my flashlight and froze. because the reflection was wrong. It was me, and yet it was not me. The figure in the glass stood still while I tilted my head. Then it smiled slowly, though my mouth did not move. I felt my throat close as the reflection raised its hand, pressing it against the glass. The crack spread with a sound like bones splintering, and then the hand pushed through the mirror. Cold, pale fingers stretching into the air, I stumbled back, my flashlight beam shaking across the walls. But the figure dragged itself forward, crawling out of the mirror, its body wrong. Its eyes, nothing but black holes, dripping shadows. I turned and ran into the hallway, the doors slamming shut one by one as I passed them, each bang louder than the last. I barreled down the stairs, but the house seemed to twist around me, the steps longer than before, the air thicker. I could hear the figure behind me dragging itself forward, its breath hot and wet on the back of my neck, though I dared not look. When I reached the bottom, the front door slammed shut on its own. I yanked at the knob, but it would not move. The wood pulsed beneath my hands like flesh. The windows blacked out. No moonlight, no stars, just endless dark pressing against the glass. I spun around my flashlight beam, catching the reflection figure now standing at the foot of the stairs, its mouth stretched impossibly wide. It whispered my name, though I had never spoken it aloud in that place. The sound crawled into my skull like worms. I stumbled back into the kitchen cabinets, rattled. Plates cracked, though no one touched them. The walls seemed to breathe, the ceiling dripping with some thick black liquid that hissed when it hit the floor. I shoved through a swinging door into the basement steps, spiraling down into choking darkness. I told myself maybe there was another way out, but the deeper I went, the colder the air grew, until my breath came in clouds. Though no heat touched me, I reached the bottom and found myself in a vast space that should not have fit. Beneath the house, the stone walls stretched endlessly, faint candles burning, though no one had lit them. Rows of mirrors lined the walls, each one cracked, each one showing not my reflection, but other versions of me. Some screaming, some crying, some standing silent with eyes full of hate. Every single one of them pressed their hands against the glass, pounding to get out. The sound thundered in my skull until I thought it would split open. Then I saw it, the figure from upstairs now whole, standing at the far end of the basement. It raised its hand, and all the reflections mirrored it in unison. 1,000 broken versions of me smiling with mouths that were not mine. The figure spoke in a voice that was every voice I had ever known. My parents, my friends, even my own. And it said, "You belong here now." The mirrors shattered all at once. A storm of glass slicing the air, I fell to the ground, shielding my face. But when I looked up, I was no longer in the basement. I was standing in the upstairs hallway again. The mirror in the corner, whole unbroken, but my reflection was gone. I reached out trembling, and the glass was warm to the touch. Then a face appeared mine, but smiling twisted eyes, black and endless. It raised its hand against the inside of the glass, and I realized with a horror, I was not in the hallway at all. I was inside the mirror, pounding against the glass, screaming, though no sound left my mouth as I watched my reflection turn and walk out of the room carrying my flashlight, leaving me trapped, staring into a world that would never see me again. The graveyard was a place I never wanted to be, but sometimes life and dares and foolish pride drag you into places you know you should never step. It was late at night. The fog rolled across the street so heavy it looked like waves, swallowing everything in front of me. The iron gates of the cemetery rose up through the mist, rusted, twisted their spikes like teeth. I stood before them, clutching my flashlight tighter than I realized, my knuckles white as bone. The air grew colder as I pushed the gate. It shrieked open, the sound echoing in the fog like a scream. The moment I stepped inside, I felt the world shift behind me. The street, the town, the lights all gone, replaced by silence so deep I could hear the thud of my own heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I walked the path lined with headstones, some tall and proud, some broken, leaning into the dirt names and dates carved so long ago. They had become nothing more than shadows etched into stone. The fog clung to them, twisting shapes that looked like hands reaching out of the ground. Every step I took, the mist seemed to thicken, swallowing the beam of my flashlight until it barely lit more than a few feet ahead. I kept telling myself it was only fog. Only stone, only the tricks of the night. But the deeper I walked, the heavier it all felt. The graves grew denser. The air colder. I tried to ignore the feeling of being watched, but it pressed into my skull with every step. Halfway down the path, I heard it, the crunch of gravel. Not mine, slow, deliberate footsteps, keeping pace just behind me. I stopped my light. Shaking, the sound stopped too. I spun around, but the path behind was swallowed in mist. Nothing. There were only white rolling waves of fog. I whispered hello, but my voice fell flat like the air devoured it. I forced myself forward, the path leading deeper, between rows of leaning headstones and broken statues, many of them angels with their wings, chipped faces worn away, until they looked more like skulls than guardians. Their eyes hollow, staring at me as I passed. The fog swirled at my feet, rising higher, until I felt it curling cold against my knees and then against my chest. The silence grew thicker until I could no longer hear even the sound of my own breathing. It was then I saw it ahead of me, a building rising out of the fog. The mausoleum, its stone door cracked open just enough for blackness to seep out around the edges. Every instinct told me to turn back, but something stronger, some pull I could not resist, dragged me forward. The door moaned as I pushed it wider. The air inside struck me like ice. It smelled of earth rot and something metallic like rust or blood. My flashlight cut across stone coffins lined against the walls. Some broken open lids split, others sealed tight. Yet each one seemed to tremble just enough to make me step back. I whispered again, trying to hear my own voice in that cold silence, but it echoed back to me distorted, as though someone else was speaking in my tone, mocking me. I backed toward the door, ready to leave, but it slammed shut on its own. The sound, a thunderclap that rattled the stone around me. The light flickered as the air grew heavier, my chest tight, my skin damp with sweat, though the cold bit into me. I turned slowly, my flashlight beam sliding across the walls until it stopped on movement. Something standing between two coffins, a figure wrapped in fog. Its shape almost human, but stretched its arms too long, its head tilted at an angle that no neck should allow. I froze the beam, trembling across its body, but the fog swallowed it. Before I could see clearly, then it spoke my name in a whisper, so faint I thought at first it was in my head. But the sound carried around the mausoleum, circling me, like hands brushing my ears. I stumbled back the beam, catching another coffin. Its lid cracked just enough for me to see something inside a face. Pale, rotted eyes, still open, staring at me, the mouth twisted in a silent scream. I dropped the light in panic, its beam spinning across the floor, shadows dancing like living things. When I picked it up again, the figure was closer, standing only a few feet away, its face still hidden in mist, but I could feel it grinning. I backed against the wall, the stone cold against me. My flashlight flickered again, and when it steadied, the room was filled with shadows, all moving on their own. Stretching long fingers across the stone floor, reaching for me, I bolted forward, slamming into the door, but it would not move. My fist pounded against it. But the stone felt alive, pulsing faintly beneath my skin. I spun around and the figure was gone, but the shadows remained crawling up the walls, slithering across the ceiling, dripping like tar. When they touched the ground, they rose into shapes, tall, thin forms, all faceless. All turning toward me at once, my flashlight sputtered and died, leaving only darkness. I could feel them moving closer, the air pressing tighter against my chest. My breath shallow. Then a glow sparked in the center of the mausoleum, faint at first, then brighter. A lantern sitting on the ground, though no one had placed it there. Its light was not fire, but a swirling black flame. Shadows dancing inside it. I felt drawn to it, pulled against my will. I tried to resist, but my body moved on its own toward the lantern. When I reached it, I looked down and saw not my reflection in the glass, but a coffin lid closing over me as though I was looking at my own burial. The shadows around me whispered in unison, not words, but a sound that crawled beneath my skin. My legs buckled. I fell to my knees. My hand touching the lantern the moment I did, every shadow in the room froze. The fog inside the glass burst outward, swallowing me whole. I was no longer in the mausoleum I was lying on. Cold earth above me, rows of gravestones stretching into the fog. The entire graveyard endless in every direction. I stumbled to my feet, my flashlight gone, the lantern still in my hand, its black flame burning brighter than ever. I tried to find the gate, but there was no gate, no fence. Only gravestones stretching forever. I screamed until my throat burned. But the fog swallowed every sound. Then I saw them shadows rising from the graves, their forms twisting and swaying, faceless figures clawing their way out of the earth. Their whispers louder this time, filling my skull with static. I ran, stumbling between gravestones, but the graveyard shifted around me, paths twisting into circles, stones leaning across my way, blocking me at every turn. The shadows grew closer, reaching out their arms, stretching too long, brushing my shoulders with fingers like ice. Each touch burned my skin, though no mark remained. Finally, I saw it, a figure standing tall in the fog, different from the rest, its form sharper, clearer. It raised its arm and pointed behind me. I turned and saw an open grave, fresh earth piled around it, the coffin inside, waiting. The lantern pulsed in my hand, brighter and brighter, until it split the air with a crack of thunder. I felt my body dragged forward, pulled into the grave, the soil sliding like quicksand beneath me. I tried to fight, screaming, clawing at the ground, but the shadows swarmed me, dozens of hands, pushing me down, their whispers rising into one final word: mine. The last thing I saw before the dirt closed over my head was the fog curling like smoke above the grave, and the lantern burning on the edge of the coffin, its black flame flickering like a smile.
Thanks for watching C&T Horror Stories. Please like, share, and subscribe if you dare, because the nightmares are just beginning.